Hello, everyone. Welcome to Esoteric Easter. This is a series of videos presented as my gift to you as we approach Easter of 2018. And this is March 12th, the first of these talks. They're informal. They're just sharing my own inspiration and nothing official here. Because what's official is what's in the Urantia revelation. We all have our own interpretation. And it just happens I've spent some decades going through this and trying to understand it. It actually is simple in a certain sense. And we're going to find out the simplicity of it today. There's some core points which are in this sacred teaching that Jesus has to give us through the vehicle of the Urantia book. We are privileged to have this text of the Urantia book as an enhancement to the Bible. And I think the Bible itself is an amazing, almost miraculous gift of teaching about Jesus and his life. But now we're in the internet age and in the age of advanced technology. It's the 21st century. So we need an update, and that's what we get in the Urantia revelation. So thanks for tuning in, and this is suitable for anybody, even beginners, and even if you're beginning right now with the Urantia material, it's designed for you too. But in order to track with me, you'll need to read the assignment, which begins with paper 170 in the Urantia book, which I covered tonight. And we're going to go all the way to paper 195 over the coming weeks as we approach Easter and then the aftermath of Easter in April. So let's dive in. So first of all, a little bit more about myself. Again, my name is Byron, and my work with this material is manifest in my book, Your Evolving Soul. It's called Your Evolving Soul, and much of what we talk about today is related to that book, which is focused especially on what is the human soul and the self. What is the self really all about? I also put together the Evolving Souls community on YouTube. So you go to YouTube and subscribe there, or you can subscribe at my website, Evolving-Souls.org, to get our updates, which are once or twice a month. So tonight I'm going to do, actually I'm going to break this into two talks, keep it as short as I can. One is on the core gospel of Jesus, but and that's sufficient for a single talk, believe me. But the second one is about the context of that teaching and the history, both the life of Jesus and the history preceded his life on earth and the aftermath. So we're going to go into that in a second short video that follows after this. So the two videos you're getting tonight. So this is the first video, and here we're diving into the what is known as the what I would call a systematic presentation of the gospel of Jesus, which is not his usual practice, because Jesus taught as the occasion required, and he was a pragmatic teacher who taught to his audience. So he didn't have an audience of professors. He had an audience of regular people. Also, he had some of the specialists, you might call them, who were the Jewish priests and rabbis and Pharisees, who were mainly his enemies. But he taught for the ordinary person. But at some point, it is helpful to collect all these points that he made in one place, and they do that in paper 170. So 170 is challenging for all of us because it is a lot of content to digest, number one, because it collects all these teachings in one chapter. Secondly, it's in a kind of Judeo-Christian language. It isn't the lingo we use today, certainly not New Age kind of language psychology, psychospirituality, and consciousness studies. That's not what this material in this paper is about. It's in other parts of the Urantia book, they get more into the psychology and the what I would call transpersonal psychology aspects of its teachings, and those are covered in my book, Your Evolving Soul, which is much more sort of postmodern content. But this is a recasting that is really a teaching to the church, in my view, to the Christian church of our time, to straighten out some pretty big misconceptions and confusions that happened because they didn't have photocopy machines back then. They didn't have recording. It was all just a kind of a lucky chance but a lot of the teachings got written down and preserved. It's almost like I said, it's almost like a miracle that we got the four Gospels, and they're gorgeous documents. But now we need to clarify for the modern world and the postmodern world. So the first of these points is what I would call the dual concept of the gospel of the kingdom. And these are stated and restated in the Urantia book. You'll find them in the Bible, but it's in much more broad statement and restatement in the UB. But they're boiled down to what we can call the truth of God as our parent, and the correlating fact that if God is everyone's parent, mother and father, then all of us are siblings. We're all related in a big family. And the Urantia book expands our family. It's not just the Greeks and the Jews in ancient times. It's not Western Europe. It's not just the planet. It's our planet and other planets. But let's leave that aside for the moment. So we're speaking of the brotherhood, the siblinghood, sisterhood of God's family, that we're all his children who are created by God. And because of the parenthood of God, we have this sisterhood and brotherhood. So that's really the core gospel teaching. And there's many ways to put it. You can say it's the reality of God's love for us, understood in relationship to our love for each other and for ourselves. That's another way to state this gospel. And so let's break it down some more. When pressed, Jesus would put it in a soundbite. Jesus would say, "This gospel of this kingdom is within you. It's inside you." It was a rough one for those days because they didn't really understand about an inner life. Just think of the Roman times. I mean, maybe in Greek philosophy there was some discussion of an inner life, but not really so much in Hebrew thought. It was more about the community of members of Judaism, and not so much a focus on the individual that was central for them. But the Greeks were beginning to say the individual is the important part of this, but it was Jesus really, and this is what scholars will say too, if you read of these histories of that period, is that the individual was not preeminent at that time. So Jesus was very transgressive in focusing on the fact that your inner life is the real, most sacred teaching. And there's a kind of paradox with this, which is that the inner life has within it something that's outside of it. That what's outside of it is God, our Father, Mother, but it's inside of us, and we can locate it there, but its source is outside. So what's inside, immanent in us, is a transcendent reality. So within us is that whole reality, because the divine Father, Mother has sent a fragment, a part of God's self is inside of us. That's the kingdom within. And so what we have here is something other than pantheism. This is not New Age pantheism where God is everything, everything is God, God is everywhere. There's a focus of the divine in the human, in each person, that's unique. It's not there in animals. It seems like it is there in some dogs and elephants and porpoise, and dolphins, but we're led to believe from the Urantia teaching that uniquely humans have God's presence as a piece and a real fragment of real deity. So the breaking this down some more is the notion that God is sovereign. Sovereign meaning is at least for me, it means that God is at the center of all things. God is the source of all things, is at the center of the universe, of universes, the center point. So the universe is not sort of randomly flung out in all directions without any heart. There's actually there's a conscious beating heart center, which is actually a self-aware center. It's not just the forces out there. It's a living, loving, conscious, infinite being who, by the way, has her own family, which is known as the Trinity. And so, God is also family oriented in his divine domain as the Trinity. But that's for another day to discuss. But we have the sovereignty of God as our source, meaning our creator. God is our creator. What else could God be but our creator by definition? So the creator has endowed us with attributes which are like God. These attributes start with our personhood, what I like to call our personhood. In my book, Your Evolving Soul, I explain this at great length, that our personhood is divine. I mean, it's literally a fractal, as I put it, of God. And so we have two things. We have a fragment and a fractal of deity within us. That is the gifting to us. That is why what is within us is the kingdom, because we have these gifts that are activated with life. So we're given the gift of life. We're also given the gift of mind. The mind itself, consciousness, is also gifted upon us. It's not really a product of nature. It is something added to natural evolution, the mind endowment. It's a wonderful topic for Urantia study, is what is meant by mind. So the fact that we have this reality of sovereignty of God, of this structure or this design of the selfhood, that we're designed in such a way that we're actually like God, because we are self-awareness, we have freedom of will, our will is free, we have liberty to choose what we like and don't like. That's an amazing endowment, and so we have this from our sovereign creator, but he gives us a piece of sovereignty, a sovereignty over our own life. And then what flows from that is, when we recognize that we have these wonderful endowments, is that we now want to be in relationship with this infinite creator. And you can't come to something infinite as a know-it-all. You can't come to it with a whole bunch of preconceptions and fixed ideas that you got from your childhood or from your college education. You come to it open-hearted, open-minded. You come as a child would come to a parent. In a healthy family, the child trusts the father and mother. So the trusting relationship with God as Father is what we're talking about here. And so with this trust, then we say to ourselves, well, all right, so this is our creator. We're endowed with these divine characteristics. What shall I do? Well, I'd like to know what God wants of me. Since God created me, so I'd like to give the gift of finding out the divine will. So the divine will, and we want to know what God's consciousness is, actually, what God consciousness is like. But within that, we're taught by Jesus that we focus on the will aspect. What it needs to be done? What actually is the actions to take to bring this kingdom into reality? And there are two things that are essential, we're taught in this paper, 170. The two essential things are, one, faith, and two is hunger for the truth. So once you enter by faith, then you can feel like, wow, I'm inside this sacred domain inside of myself, which is actually both outside. It's the universe itself that's inside me, but as this self-aware selfhood that I'm evolving. And so we're now open as a child for more. Give me more truth, more growth. So we call this faith as truth-seeking awareness. Faith as not a set of dogmas that we're supposed to believe, but faith as like a scientist. Let's investigate. Let's put it under a microscope, or let's get a telescope and look into the stars. And let's observe society and understand the social sciences and the human sciences. And let's look within and understand our psychology. This is what somebody of faith would do, because you care about the facts and the truth. So we're choosing God consciousness, and God is everything. And in the Urantia book and in many other places, we're taught that all of reality, it can be brought down to three primary values: this truth, goodness, and beauty. So with hunger for truth, it's also really the same thing as you're hungry for what's good. You're hungry for what's beautiful. So you seek out beauty in your life. You don't seek out things that are ugly. You want beauty around you, and you want to know what's good. What is the right thing to do in this situation? And you want to know what is the truth about biology, astrophysics. These are the things that a child, we as a child in the universe, as sons and daughters of God, are privileged to find out about. So these are features for modern people of the gospel of Jesus. So let's look a little bit more at faith, because I personally always have trouble with the word faith, because it always makes me feel like when I grew up, I was supposed to believe in the creed, and we had to recite the creed. And for us, we recited it in Greek, and we didn't even know it was it was a lot of the stuff was Greek for me. I mean, literally Greek, and I didn't know what they meant by faith. But faith, now we know of, if we follow the Urantia book, faith is it's like a transaction. There's actually a series of transactions that grow out of faith. The first transaction is faith as an entrance into the gospel of the kingdom. We're entering in by saying, okay, I don't know everything. I want to know your universe, God. I want this to be revealed to me, but first I want to know you. I want to know you. If I can know you, what are you? Who are you? Well, God, of course, is not just the universe of physics, not just the force, but God is personal in the sense of it couldn't be any less than a person, because God is our creator. So God can be known as a person. God can be personally contacted, is contactable. And in so doing, in order to do that kind of, to contact this divine, sacred, infinite being, you can't come as a cynic. You have to come as a child, and that's the entrance. That's the price you pay to have the humility before the infinite. That I'm not the infinite. God is the infinite. I'm the finite child. So once you enter, there's another transaction. This is the transaction of God's love coming into you. It's already there, but you haven't experienced it unless you've entered in to this transaction of faith. So let's all do that. Let's enter into the transaction of faith in through this gospel. So having done that, there's another transaction, and they all really are one transaction, but we're breaking it down. So the transaction that enables this actually is that you look around you at others and you recognize, again, this is the brotherhood. These are my brothers. These are my sisters. These are of eternal value. Their personalities. They have the image of God, each one of them, even the ones I don't like, even my enemies. So I accept them as my fellows in this great family. And as soon as you do that, when you do that, you forgive them. You know, they're imperfect. They may be again, they may be your enemies, but we're told to love our enemies. So that is that by that transaction, you feel love. When you love anything or anyone, love flows in through you. You're not the source of the love. God the Father, the Mother is the source of the love. So it's flowing through you and refreshing you and renewing you. And that's a transaction that is best facilitated through loving service to others. And then that makes you, that elevates you, and it elevates them. When you recognize we're all endowed with this incredible personhood, this incredible willpower, freedom, liberty, consciousness, and we're evolving. We're evolving as soul. The soul is the result of our choices, and we are developing an eternal soul. So we're all in one big family doing this through a series of transactions that begin with faith, that begin with this exchange of this price we pay of accepting and believing God's promises, entering into the kingdom, then seeing others as our brothers and sisters, and feeling the love flowing through us, to us, and back to us. That's the kingdom that Jesus was teaching us, and still teaching us right now, all over the world, and in all sorts of churches and outside of them, and much of the New Age teaching, and even Buddhist teaching and Hindu teaching and Islam has been very influenced by the same gospel. Moving on into paper 170, and I'm going to try to make it easier for you to read this paper, which is not a simple transaction matter to read. Paper 170, it's so systematic, but there are 5 cardinal features you need to remember in this paper that are the cornerstones of the gospel of the kingdom within. Number 1 is the preeminence of you and me, the preeminence of the individual, that the individual is the sacred unit here as the foundation. And that was not a simple matter in Palestine 2,000 years ago, because they had slavery, or they had dictatorship. They didn't have human rights. They didn't have voting rights. They didn't, women were not, had almost no rights. Women weren't even literate, weren't even educated. So the individual has, because of these teachings over the last 2,000 years, the individuals come forward more and more and more. We have human rights now. We have voting rights. We have civil rights. We have recognition of the equality of women. All these things are cardinal features of the gospel. That's number 1. Number 2 is a surprise to me. Number 2 is the importance of the will, the centrality of the will. I would have thought it'd be the centrality of consciousness, of awareness, or for some of my colleagues, the feeling life, the heart, the feeling self is the central. It's the central teaching. But in the way we're presented in the Urantia revelation and in the Bible, it's more important is the will, that is the willingness to love, the willingness to open your consciousness. So it's not just consciousness is the tool. So it's not about consciousness, it's about you and how you use your mind and your body and your heart and your feelings in order to further the kingdom of love. And so the centrality of the will, the choices you make, then don't forget, these are the choices in my book that I say are central in the co-creation of your soul. Your immortal personal soul is the harvest of all the decisions you make through your free will. So will is central to the immortal soul that survives death. So that's why we're so focused here on the centrality of the human will. Number 3. So we got 5 cardinal points here. This is number 3. There you'll see in paper 170 is the practice, our practice, the meditation and communion practice of communion with God, a worship of our Father and Mother God. This is a contemplative inner place of relaxation and meditation, where we know that we are loved and that we explore the joy of that and the delight of that. And so that's done as a very personal act of I call it meditation and communion, and you can call it something else, but it has these unerring fruits that are in Buddhism they call them the paramitas. These are the fruits of the spirit, and so what we're invited to do is to commune with our Creator and watch our life transform. So that leads us to the 4th of the 5 cardinal features, and the 4th is the joy of service. So the loving service that we're giving to our brothers and sisters who are part of the gospel, of the family of God. So that is not something that you have to do in a calculating way. It's something that would be done as a natural overflowing from the encounter with the sacred reality within you. And that is a superpowering energy of love, mercy, forgiveness for yourself and others. So that leads to, again, the number 4, the joy of loving service, the joy loving others as brothers and sisters. But we can even go further. And if the discipleship and apostleship with Jesus is to love one another as Jesus loved us. Jesus loves us the way a parent would, even. Not to say that you're going to be the parent to your friends, but that you give so much, you think in a fatherly and motherly way how to nurture, how to take care of your friends, your associates, your colleagues, and of course your children. So that's number 4. Number 5 in the 5 cardinal features of the gospel is that God is spirit, that this is about spiritual attainment. This is about growing in your awareness of that the spiritual is transcendent to the body. That doesn't mean the body is not important and not like a sacred vehicle. Absolutely not. And it means nature and the ecology of life is sacred. But the source of nature, the source of you, your body, the source of evolution, the source of civilization is spirit, is God as spirit, which sets in motion all this evolution that allows you to come forth as a liberty, in the liberty of love, of the gospel. So let's go over those, just summarize those again. Number 1, preeminence of the individual. Number 2, the centrality of the will. Will is central because will allows us to co-create a soul that survives death so that we can have eternal life. So that's number 2. Number 3 is the privilege, honor, and imperative of becoming conscious of the divine presence that is communing with God, worshiping God in peace, and really dwelling in the stillness, and dwelling every day in the stillness of meditation and of recognition of the sovereignty of God as our Father and Mother. 4th, the joy of loving service, that we love one another as we are loved. And 5th is that this is the spiritual life. That the physical is the vehicle of the spiritual, and so our spiritual attainment is the great goal of our life. In the broadest sense, when we say spirituality, we don't just mean mysticism. We mean science, scientific achievement. We mean social being a policymaker, making better, sustainable society. It means engaging in the arts, the pursuit of beauty. All of these things are part of the transcendence of the spiritual over dead matter. and so we value all of it, but we put a greater value on life and spirit. So there's one last part of this teaching that we're going to do in this first video. And this is the 5 phases. This is another 5. It's 5 phases over time of the manifestation of the gospel of the kingdom. And these 5 are as follows. Number 1, our fellowship with God. Number 2, society, building a society motivated by a higher morality. Number 3 is that we're surrounded by a invisible brotherhood, sisterhood of invisible spiritual beings, angels and others. Number 4 is that this huge community of humans, animals, and higher invisible beings is moving forward, evolving into a higher new order of society. And number 5 is the final fruition of a utopia, really. It's an enlightened society, which is the full social expression of this gospel. So let's go over those 5 a little bit more, and then we'll conclude. Number 1 is what we've been speaking of, is first that we number 1, we first look to the kingdom. That's your first priority, is your personal fellowship with the divine. Make sure that that's dominant inside in your inner life. So having done that, then we share that with others. We build this brotherhood, this sisterhood around us. And in order to do that, we have to implement the golden rule. Remember that with faith, we entered into the kingdom, and we receive the love. We pay the price of faith, but then we receive God's love, mercy, God's forgiveness by forgiving others. And to forgive others is to love them the way you love yourself. You don't love them less than you love yourself. So you have to forgive them. You have to get over their issues. And even if they're your enemies, you're going to love and pray for them. So that leads us to recognize that we're really citizens of the universe. And as citizens of a larger universe, we realize that they're literally extraterrestrial brothers and sisters. There's interdimensional or ultra-terrestrial, if you will, angelic host here and throughout the universe. And they're part of our family too. And when we realize that, we really can move all together as one great family to what the Urantia book calls the spiritual age of light and life. So I'll leave you with that, and I thank you. And tune right back in. You're going to see another link to another video, which is on the history and the context and background of this aspect of the teachings of Jesus. Thank you very much. And may I give you a little meditation in the meantime, between now and the next video, which is to just breathe in the love of God, and then breathe out the will of God. So you could even do it like this: thank you for your love. May I do your will. Or you can just shorten that to Father, I do your will. Dear Father, dear Mother, show me how to do your will. So thank you very much. I'll be back with the next video shortly.